Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Joe and I have been going to Stamford Bridge for over 30 years. For the past 3 years, we've been exchanging voice notes on everything from the highs in Porto to the lows of Potter. Each week, this podcast will take you inside our unfiltered thoughts on all things Chelsea, sharing our view from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes. Final whistle has just gone. Chelsea 5, Morecambe 0. Not often you get a game with no injury time, is there? But literally 90 minutes bang on. But I think everyone was probably happy to get out the cold and crack on with their day. Yeah, pretty much the definition of a routine win, wasn't it, really? First half wasn't great. We had loads of ball and didn't do much with it. And then second half was much better. Amazing the difference Cucurella made, I thought. He's just a bundle of energy, isn't he? And he brings so much to the game. Really kind of showed, I think, when he came on. A few things I just pick out. One is João Félix. What I put on the WhatsApp group, I just felt it sums him up so well. Whenever I watch him, I mean, obviously playing Morecambe, but he's got so much natural ability, hasn't he? Like, his touch is fantastic. He's quick on the turn. He can pass the ball. He can shoot, but he's sort of so frustrating that you kind of think, more often than not, it doesn't quite kind of come off, and you just feel like his whole career is sort of defined by that. And of course, in the second half, he massively shut me up by scoring, 2 really good goals, particularly the second one, which was just unbelievable. But when I watch him, I really like him, and you just kind of go, you could be brilliant. Like, you could be, almost anything you want to be. You kind of feel like he's got a bit of everything. But I don't know, it just sort of flatters to, I don't know, you don't sort of suddenly think, oh, he's got to start now against Bournemouth, do you? You're kind of like, well, no, he'll probably be on the bench, and that's probably, his role. He's just a funny player. He's an interesting player, I think, in that respect. The Tosin, a couple of good goals, doing his best impression of Rudiger, and fair play to him, because he needed a bit of a good game, didn't he? And then the other one to probably pick out is Jorgensen, with maybe the least convincing clean sheet a goalkeeper's likely to get. I thought he looked not great, did he, on a couple of occasions with the ball at his feet, and obviously from crosses he got lucky a couple of times, but he got away with it. But it doesn't feel you huge. It doesn't sort of, if he is knocking on Sanchez's door, he's not knocking particularly firmly with performance like that. What did you make of I thought that the press conference from Maresca and then the lineup? It'd be interesting to know what you thought of that in terms of what it says about the transfer window, because I think it says a lot about the outgoings, doesn't it? He basically confirmed that Chilwell, Cassidy and Chukwuemeka are all going to be leaving, and obviously none of those guys were involved for obvious reasons. Just, you could break that down in different ways, couldn't you? I think Chuck is the one we're all a bit disappointed about, because he looked like such a good player at times, but he just doesn't seem to have a role in this team. Chilwell has just never fit the system the way he wants to play. Could be such a good player for someone, couldn't he, Chilwell? And then Cassidy is, I think, the sort of player we're going to have to get used to, isn't he, in this model where you get a young player, comes in, looks all right, does a decent couple of loan spells, and then basically sold on for profit. And it's just going to have to get used to not getting too attached to these players, and then you kind of hope that there's 1 in 4 of those that come in and be a real, first team starter. But it's kind of the business model, isn't it? So, yeah, all of those likely to go out. Hopefully, you'd probably hope on permanence. Well, I'd rather Chukwuemeka stay, but for the club, they're probably looking for permanence. But that'll all be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if Chilwell and Chukwuemeka were loans, would you? Just can't see clubs paying the fees that we'd want for them. And then the other thing I thought was interesting in the lineup was the fact that Nkunku played. He's obviously been linked to PSG, amongst others, this week. And the fact that he did play makes me think that they're not looking necessarily to rush anything there, which again, in my opinion, I'm fine with. I'd wait till the summer, I think. I like the idea of Delap or someone else or an Osman in the summer, but I just think it's going to be very difficult to get them now, and you're probably going to overpay. Whereas in the summer, either of those targets, if we decided we wanted to go for them, could be quite a lot easier, I think. You've got, don't have to get too much detail now, but obviously if Ipswich go down, Delap becomes a much easier player to get. And Osman off the back of a loan spell becomes, I think, a bit easier in the summer. But so I on the attacking front, I'd kind of leave as we are, I think. And he didn't shoot down the Mark Gay links. I don't know if you noticed that, but he was asked about him, and he basically said, "I'm not going to talk about a Palace player," but he also said, he's a player I like. He's a great player, and he didn't shoot down saying we don't need a centre back. So it'd be interesting. I mean, if you could say now you swap Disasi for Gay for the rest of the season and beyond, I think we'd all be pretty happy with that, wouldn't we? And he would be a pretty major upgrade for us. But yeah, overall, you got to take that. And time to crack open a Saturday night beer for me here and enjoy a nice evening. We're going to watch Sonic 3 with the kids with beer and popcorn. That is living the dream. Cheers, mate. I'll speak to you later.
Hello. Yes, that was a fairly routine win, wasn't it, in the end? I didn't feel under pressure or even concerned for 1 minute, if I'm honest with you, if they were going to score a goal, let alone win the game. So, I mean, from Chelsea's point of view, it was job done. And you can't complain, whoever you play. If you win 5-0 at home, you win 5-0. And it's nice for Chelsea to kind of get back on a winning run. I know it's Morecambe, and I know it's not exactly the highest of highs, but I think just occasionally the club need a victory. With 2 draws and 2 defeats in the last 4 games. It's nice just to break that cycle and get back on the winning train. I thought that we huffed and puffed, didn't we, in the first half? There was lots of sort of passes were going a bit astray. I thought we were forcing it quite a bit. There wasn't enough, not so much structure, but when you make changes, there always feels like a little bit of getting used to one another, even for the first few minutes of the game. And I felt like we were rushing things a little bit and a bit too eager to score and snatching at chances. And again, I think that's because we've been on a run of not winning in 4 games. And it doesn't matter how good the squad is, it doesn't matter how good the players are individually or whatever, it still takes a little bit of time to get up to speed. And as you know, as the goals rolled in, as soon as Nkunku got that second one in the second half, you were like, okay, it'll be fine now. And then bang, it's 3-0, then it's 4-0, then it's 5-0, and you're like, okay, this is a rout now. And yeah, as for the players, I thought everybody did okay. Again, a bit like the previous Premier League match. I thought everybody was just right. Obviously we scored a few goals, but I kind of expect Nkunku and Felix and whoever to notch in these games, and they've proven in the Conference League that they're more than capable of doing that. So for me, I wasn't surprised. It's nice for them to score, whether they remain at the club. Not so much Felix at the moment, but obviously Nkunku is one that's been talked about a lot in the press. Would I be surprised to see him go? No. Would I like to see him go? No. Not if we can't replace him. I think there's lots of talk of, Nkunku might leave. And of course, there's been the talk of Delap. But what I would hate for Chelsea to do is sell Nkunku and then Cole Palmer gets an injury next week. And you're like, oh my God, what the fuck have we done? So I think there needs to be an element of take a step back, think about all the situations that are going on. I know Nkunku's not a number 9, but equally he's not played there regularly enough for us to sort of prove one way or the other. He's not been brilliant in that sort of role. But obviously, if he knew he was going to get a run of games, and players are funny like this. If for example, Jackson was injured now for a month and he knew he was going to play 4 weeks up front, you might see a change of attitude. The fact is, he's thinking, even if I play this week or next week, the chances are I might not play the next 3 games. So their mood is instantly kind of on the down. And I think that does have an effect on their confidence. So I think we need to be careful. If Nkunku does leave, there has to be a replacement. Or Felix turns out to be that player and he plays the Cole Palmer role if he was to get injured. As for some of the other players, I thought Tosin did well. Obviously, he scored 2 goals on obviously a big slight deflection, but it was nice to see him. I called him out 2 weeks ago and said he doesn't do the things he was doing at Fulham for us. And that is just, his shots there made it all the difference for us today. the first goal and the third goal, it got us in the lead and kind of extended the lead. You know, it was nice to see him sort of break out of his shell a little bit. Sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes you just need to just say, sod it, and just go for a smash, in which he did. It was nice to see. You're right, Cucurella. I thought his influence in the second half made a big difference, and he's cemented himself as the number 3, or the traditional number 3, as it were, at left back. He's got to stay fit, and he's got to make sure he's not getting himself booked and sent off for stupid things. That's something it's part of his game, I know, and his makeup, but I think he needs to just curb it a little bit. You know, you can still be a pain in the arse, but you haven't got to get booked and sent off as regularly as he does. It's just, there's no need for it. Again, if I could spend all day going through the whole team. It's Morecambe at home. I don't want to get a big sort of debate or a big conversation about certain players, particularly when I think it was a game we were all expecting them to win and to win quite comfortably. It doesn't always pan out that way, but I think today was one of those sort of victories that, yeah, I don't want to spend half an hour speaking about X, Y, and Z when in actual fact we all kind of expected the result the way it panned out. As for Maresca's comments about obviously transfers in and transfers out, I mean, yeah, Disasi for Gurhey, or sorry, excuse me, the other way around, Gurhey for Disasi would be an incredible bit of business in my eyes. I think I've said it many times. We said it privately off pod and sometimes on pod. Centre half for me is a big, big position for us. I don't think Tosin's the answer. I stand by that. Disasi is definitely not the answer. And obviously, Levi Colwill needs a little bit of experience, alongside him. And I think Gurhey offers that. I would still love Milinkovic. That would be my choice. But obviously, that's an open checkbook. And that's also Nottingham Forest willing to sell, which they're probably not. Would Palace take an offer of 55 million or so? I think they probably would. I think the player would be open to coming back to Chelsea. Who wouldn't? Let's be honest with you. Crystal Palace or Chelsea, it's a no-brainer. He's someone that would slot in right next to Colwill. And I think the two of them, even though we would have to have bought him back, he's still an academy player in my eyes. We sold him to Palace for 20 million a few years ago, which kind of has led to this point with him now breaking out with Palace and now England. So fair play to him. He's really done his kind of his minutes elsewhere. And if we were to, pinch him back off of Palace, it'd be a good bit of business. I think the Chuck deal is one of those that I'm saddened by it because me, Chris. Pochettino's first game last year, I'm at the Bridge, I'm watching Chelsea-Liverpool, and I sent you a voice note. This is kind of how the pod sort of developed, wasn't it? And I sent you that voice note saying that Chuck was outstanding today, really surprised me how he was influential and dominant in the match, and Liverpool being as good as they are, he didn't look out of place, and I was like, let's see what he does next week. Obviously, next week rolled around, and we didn't see him for the rest of the season. He scored his wonderful goal against West Ham, and that was it. He was done for the year. And it's just been a common curse. When Nkunku got injured when he came, Chuck's got injured when he came, Reece James has got injury after injury, Chilwell. You can go through so many of our players that we purchased that were good buys that just haven't worked out for one reason or another. So yeah, I'm like you, and I think there's not a person I know that doesn't say a bad thing about Chuck. I think we all feel really pissed off that, not that he's being sold, I think we can accept it, but he's not playing and he needs to progress his career. But I think there was a real chance for him to Maresca dealt with the press conference really well. The way he was speaking about other players is good. You don't want to be a manager that kind of speaks about other players too in depth and it gets their backup. I don't think we need to go down that road. If you're going to buy a player, you're going to buy him anyway, so let's not talk about him. But just sort of subtly saying, yes, we are interested without actually saying it, which is quite nice. And he deals with the press so well, Maresca. He's a wonderful guy for that. Certainly, the Delap rumours aren't going away. I mean, I think see, you jump the gun and you go for him now, and he ends up being a complete bust, or you're getting him at his cheap money and potentially his cheapest price because he's only going to get better and better. So it's a hung up one for me. Do we definitely need him? I'm not entirely sure. I've sort of said to you, maybe privately, I think that we do need someone to help Jackson. I think he needs to also understand that when he's substituted, this is Jackson, by the way, that he's very miserable when he comes off and he's quite a negative force. And I think it doesn't help the guy that's coming on. I think he needs to understand it's a team game and it's clearly a team game, and he needs to if we do sign a Delap, or if it's an Nkunku that's coming on for him, if he stays or whatever, it'd be nice to see that we could have a bit more harmony in that sort of area of the field. It does piss me off a little bit the way Jackson's substituted. He's very down and miserable. But I do think he needs a little bit of help. Again, whether that's going to be Delap or somebody else, I'm not too sure. But if we could bring Chalobah back and bring a striker in, if that's all we could do, I think that wouldn't be terrible. Chalobah back and a striker wouldn't be awful if that's all we can do in the window. If we can afford to bring in Guehi and go for Delap, then I say go for it if you can. But as long as it doesn't damage your transfer plans in the summer, if you've got your eye on someone in the summer, and whoever it might be, I don't want us to kind of not lose out, because PSR is what it is. But I don't want us to kind of feel like we're then backed into a corner and we can't spend what we want to desperately because we bought a player in January that was a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction. But I think overall we can be happy with our business today. You know, the way the team performed, they did the job as they were supposed to. There's no banana skins, and we sort of go on to the next round, as it were, and then we look forward to Bournemouth in midweek, and we desperately need a good performance against them and get ourselves back on the winning trail in the Premier League too. So watch this space in the transfer market. Chris and I would definitely say our piece if we do end up selling or buying someone next week or the week after. We will certainly give our thoughts on that. And I think, you know, we've been going to Chelsea for a long, long time, supporting the club a long, long time, longer than we would probably care to admit. But you know, we have a fairly good grounding, a good knowledge on these players who are coming in and out. And I think we would give an honest opinion. We don't just try and look for clickbait. We are looking for more in-depth conversation about transfers and what they might do in terms of affecting one player or another. So I know, Chris, you do a great job with certainly like your Nkunku takes and things about potentially not being used wisely or properly. And I agree with everything you say, and you come across really well with that. So it's always interesting to hear what you've got to say on those things. So yeah, we'll definitely do a pod if we can on any transfer business, and we'll try and keep it as up to date as possible as things happen. But yeah, pleased with today's business and obviously the result. The team obviously are definitely playing for Maresca. They're definitely playing for the badge, as it were. Even like the likes of Disasi, who's been linked away, had a fairly decent game, and nobody's sort of shut the towel in. So yeah, really happy with the result, and let's hope for a good result against Bournemouth.
Morning. It's beautiful Sunday morning here, and very sunny in London, but also absolutely freezing cold Brassic. Yeah, good win yesterday, wasn't it? Great note, Joe. Let's pick up on the Guehi and Disasi potential first, because more stuff came out about that yesterday, which is that apparently Palace would be open to conversations around 40 million for Guehi, because he's only got 18 months on his contract, and that'd be an absolute no-brainer, wouldn't it, for me at that level? Especially if you could get, 20 million maybe for Disasi. Juventus apparently interested in him. If you could do business like that, it would be just an immediate squad upgrade. Brings back, two Cobham boys, him and Colwell playing together at the back. He's played on the right side of obviously he plays more often on the left, although he's a right-footed player for Palace, but he's played on the right for England and done really, really well. That would be really, really good, I think. And I think you said it before, he is experienced, isn't he? He's one of those players that comes in at sort of 27 who has a bit more experience and can actually help that younger back four and stuff like that. So love to see that one develop. And you do think that with Chalobah being at Palace and doing pretty well, there might be a deal to be done there as well. The other thing I like about that one, which is, this might sound a bit random, but I like the idea as well that the door's never closed on players coming back to Chelsea. And there's been a couple of examples when we've done it in the past. People like David Luiz, way back when, and Matic, again, came back after being sold. And I do really like the idea of that on the basis that people like Conor Gallagher doing really well at Atletico, Hudson-Odoi, how low we sold him to Forest, it was 5 million, but with quite a big percentage sell-on, I believe. So if we were looking in the future to go, another left-wing option, and you were talking about Hudson-Odoi and Sancho being options on the left, again, you'd probably take that. based on his form right now. And again, I like the idea of the door being open, and because of these, in my opinion, pretty stupid PSR rules, actually, Gallagher, when you buy him back, even if you buy him back for 50 million, is actually better on the books than he is as a free agent, because you can, not a free agent, as a young player, because you can kind of obviously accumulate his value over a number of years, and he's less appealing as a sale, which is like a bit stupid, but you'd almost be, the way the rules work would actually make that deal make sense, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I'd really like that one, and if that happened, I think, as you say, not as big an upgrade as the big boy from Forest would be, but not one at 40 million that closes the door to make a summer deal as well for someone else, and I think would just be a really, really good member of the squad. And you do need, I think, if we're looking to build, a title challenging squad for next season or beyond, you're going to need 3 or 4 top centre-backs. That's just the nature of the game. You need that.
Why is it in the mouth?
So Frankie's kicking me out of his room. Elsewhere, a couple of random bits I wanted to pick up on. One was, I listened to the first 10 minutes of the game yesterday on the Chelsea app, and I was just listening to a bit when the players were coming out and stuff. And this is a bugbear of mine. I think I've said it on the pod before, but it just, I don't know, when you listen to it in your headphones, it just sounds all the more ridiculous, which is Chelsea players coming out, a Liquidator song, which is obviously our iconic Chelsea tune. I have it as my ringtone on my phone, as you know, Joe. And we're playing Morecambe at home in the FA Cup, and all you can hear is diddle diddle diddle. We hate Tottenham, Chelsea. And it's like, come on, lads, we're playing Morecambe. Why are we talking about Tottenham? And it's a real bugbear of mine. It's only happened in the last 10 years, really, that the Tottenham bit has basically become part of the song, even less, actually. And I think it kind of started after that, Battle of the Bridge game, where, again, when you play Spurs, it's brilliant. Why not sing it? But for the rest of the games, why are we singing about Tottenham? Just focus on Chelsea. And it always really, it's a real bugbear of mine. And I really would like to see that somehow just got rid of, because it's just crazy. It just shows too much. Why do we care about Tottenham, basically? Looking ahead, Bournemouth on Tuesday. It feels like, I don't know what you think, Joe, but it just feels like a really big game in our season. 4, obviously, league games without a win. Really tricky game, the way that Bournemouth have been playing. Actually, our home form in games like this hasn't been great. It's been a bit patchy, isn't it? It's been, you think of the Forest draw, the Palace game, the Fulham game. It's sort of been the games like this we've struggled a little bit. And if we could, readdress the form, get a good win at home, you suddenly feel okay, a bit more relaxed momentum again, and then you've obviously got Wolves next as well. So it does feel like a big, big game. I'm going to be quite nervous for that one, I think. And actually quite a good time to play Bournemouth, potentially. They've got a lot of injuries have come out recently. So they've got Evan Nilsson, the striker, is out, for example, quite a few others. And of course, one of the benefits of loaning players to other Premier League teams is that suddenly if they've got someone who's doing pretty well for them, they can't play against us. And Kepa is that man. He's actually done really well for him this year, hasn't he? And he won't be able to play, which again is quite useful. So, yeah, big game. Team-wise, I think he kind of gave it away, didn't he? Really think it'll be probably 10 changes from the game yesterday. And Neto, I'd imagine, be the one who starts in both games. He came off at half-time, didn't he? So you'd imagine the team outside of that pretty much picks itself. The most interesting one being Josh Achipong, who was on the bench. So I actually really like that. And you'd imagine it's him and Colwell at centre-back, which would be really good to see. Reece and Lavia probably on the bench, aren't they, for it? I think he's going to have to be really cautious with them, which, let's be honest, particularly for Reece, is very, very sensible. It was brilliant seeing him on the pitch again, wasn't it, by the way? And I feel like I say it every time, but just seeing the way he plays is just his quality. I mean, he's playing Morecambe, of course, but you just... it's almost like watching an old player come back, because you just... seen that little of him in the last couple of years that when you see him again, it's like, oh, I've missed him. He's brilliant. And then you're just thinking, oh, how long can he play for? So again, if he can come through and get maybe half an hour on Tuesday, hopefully if the game's going well, I think that's what it has to be the plan for the next month or so, isn't it? Just get him minutes, just try and keep him fit to the end of the season. But yeah, big game. Start with a question for you, Joe. Does João Félix start on Tuesday for you?
Good morning, mate. Yes, I've luckily dodged the freezing cold temperatures myself this morning. Yeah, both games were called off today again, which is a bit of a shame. We were on 4G today as well, so I'm not sure why that was called off. I think we had a 9 o'clock kickoff today, which was going to be extremely cold first thing. And I don't know if it's for player welfare or what, but I think they just decided that, do you know what? I don't think we really need to be playing in -4 or 5 if they can help it. So anyway, I'm say tucked up indoors, which is quite nice. Okay, let's start with your question then about João Félix. This is a resounding no, he's not going to start. I mean, look, I haven't got a crystal ball, but just listening to Maresca's comments about João Félix yesterday was absolutely fantastic. Not for João Félix, but it was just comedy gold. The reporter said to him something like, "Oh, João Félix, 2 goals today, took his goals well. Were you pleased with him? Something along the lines of, is he in line for a start against Bournemouth?" And Maresca's words were something like this: "João, he did well, and that's it." And he actually said, "And that's it." And the question would then move on to somebody else. And I thought to myself, yeah, you're not in line to start at all, are you? So I don't know what's going on there. The Nkunku and Felix sort of conundrum is bizarre, isn't it? They're both top footballers. Felix, he's a really difficult one because he's very likable. I like Felix a lot. He comes across well. He doesn't ever seem to moan, and I think you are going to start to see him moan at some point because, again, he's a 120, 30 million pound player a few years ago. You don't go from that to nothing overnight, and clearly there's something not right with him, is there? Well, I think we've mentioned it before. He's got all the talent in the world, and sometimes that end product is just it's just lacking at the right time. And I think against Morecambe and Europa League conference teams, and this is not a slur on Felix by any means, but he does tend to do well against those sides. He's very clinical. He sees goal, scores goal, sees the assist, creates it for somebody, and you think, oh, wow. And then he gets his chance against a Premier League opposition or maybe a top European opposition, international, and he sort of just fails to live up to those expectations, doesn't he? So, in my opinion, without going into too much detail about it, I think he's a resounding no. Let's start with the Bournemouth game then very, very briefly. We're not going to try and do lots of previews because I think we find them a little bit dull, don't we, mate? But we're going to we will lean on them now and again and obviously talk about the games coming forward and stuff, but not in a huge amount of detail because I think it's much more interesting to know what happened after the game and talk about some of the transfer stories and other news around the club in our pod. But I think the name you mentioned there, Evan Nilsson being missing, is a huge blow for them. And I was going to mention Kepa. I wasn't sure if you were going to bring him up, but Kepa's been absolutely outstanding for Bournemouth. And I'm really pleased for him. And I know he's still our player. He will never be our player. He'll never play for us again. I'll be shocked if he did. But you know what? He's a top 6. He's in a top 6 team. He's never moaned. He's never groaned. He's basically played every game this season, probably except the one that he couldn't play against us. And from what I gather, he's doing really, really well. And the reports that there's often reports on The Athletic about him and stuff where, they go in and do a little bit of detail on a player. And Kepa's always one that's mentioned as being a great teammate, somebody that never moans, never groans, gets on with his work. He realises that he was at Real Madrid last year and this year he's at Bournemouth. The levels are just so different, but someone that's always kind of got his head down and got on with it. So I've nothing but sort of respect for him. And he just wants to play football and he's playing regular Premier League football. I mean, you can't really argue with that. And whether Chelsea are paying some of his wages or all of his wages, I don't know. But either way, he's getting his money and he's still getting great game time. So good luck to him. Yes, Bournemouth will pose a threat. And I, like you, think they are going to be a dangerous outfit. When we played them at their place, I thought they were far the better team on the night. We sort of hung in the game, didn't we, with the penalty save from Sanchez and one or two other things that went for us on the day. Sanchez did make a few brilliant saves. It's probably his best game of the season, bar none. And without that performance on the night, we would have definitely lost by, maybe 3 or 4. So to come away with a 1-0 win, and who scored the goal on the night? And Kunku. So it shows he can come on and do it, but maybe not as regularly as we would have liked. Am I nervous about it? No, weirdly. I shouldn't say this because my reputation for whenever I think Chelsea are going to win a game, I don't tend to give a score, but I always have a good inkling that we are. But this feels like a game that we have to win. I agree with you. It's not a case of should we win. I think the players realise that they can't keep going on a run. Well, they can go on a run of games where they draw and lose, but they're going to find themselves 7th, 8th, and 9th before long. I think there's a change in mentality amongst this group. I do think they've got a lot of pride in them. I'm not expecting it to be a 4-0 win. A bit like the Brentford game, maybe we'll have a lot of the possession. We'll probably have a few chances. If we don't take them, we're going to give them a lot of confidence to come into the game, and that's when the game could change. At least against Brentford, we took 2 chances before they got their consolation, and they could have nicked it. Well, could have nicked a draw right near the end as well. So we've got to be careful. But I would certainly lean on us winning the game by a close margin. I don't see it being a whooping. Hey, I'd love nothing more than for Chelsea to win this game 3-0 when it could have been 7-0 and Bournemouth don't have a sniff. But I think they are good enough, and I think Iraola, the manager, has been wonderful for them, and I think he'll be looked at by a few teams in the future as a potential candidate to take over their club in the Premier League or across Spain or somewhere, because he's been superb. As for transfer business, yeah, we mentioned a little bit, didn't we, earlier in the pod about some sort of players' ins and outs that might happen or could potentially happen. Let's stick on the Mark Guehi one, because it does seem like a deal that could be done. And like you say, if Palace are willing to do business around the 40 million mark, it might be slightly more than that with add-ons, and who knows. But I'll take you back to a player, Nathan Ake. Chelsea had him. He played a little bit for us, a bit sort of in and out, left wing back, left back, centre mid. I think he played everywhere just about. And then he had a really good loan at Bournemouth. And he played fantastically well there. And no, it wasn't a loan, sorry. I think we sold him. Forgive me, we sold him. And we buy him back for 20 million. That feels about right. He then came back to us, and we never really used him. I think it was the Conte season. We were struggling in that sort of defensive area, and he brought him back to sort of shore things up and add another body in case of injury. And he sort of played bits and pieces, but not enough to make you sort of think, oh, he was wonderful. And in the summer, I'm not sure if he went away somewhere else first, and then he was bought by Man City, which was, I think we all raised an eyebrow. I think in our Chelsea group, and I'm sure a few others and fans around the country would have been going, that's a bit of an odd buy. Because we were half linked with him as well, if you remember Nathan Ake, even at the time when Man City purchased him. And I was a bit like, I think we might have dodged a bullet there, because 40 million seemed a lot for him. And I sort of put Mark Guehi and Ake in a sort of a similar bracket. Not to say they're the same player, and I actually think Mark Guehi's a much better player, if I'm being honest. But there's a lot of similarities. Obviously, being at Chelsea, going away, coming back to Chelsea would be great. That's nice to see. And like you say, the 2 academy boys of Colwill and Guehi playing together would be brilliant. So there's that sort of connection. But I know Ake was playing in a very successful Man City team, and they couldn't really do a lot wrong. But he proved to be a really shrewd signing. And it just goes to show you that even Pep Guardiola, the fantastic Pep Guardiola, he didn't look abroad. He didn't look elsewhere. He saw Nathan Ake playing regular Premier League minutes for Bournemouth. And forgive me, because I can't think of the team he went to. It might have been back to Bournemouth, actually. He saw him playing there. He realised he could play a sort of a left-sided centre-back of a 3. He could also play in the middle, and he can also play at wing-back if needed to be for the odd game here, for cup games or whatever. You can sling him in there and sort of use his versatility. And it goes to show that you don't always need to go to AC Milan or Inter Milan, Juventus, Barcelona to pick up the world's best players. Sometimes you've got them, you've already had them, you've loaned them out. In this case, in Guehi, he's got his experience with Crystal Palace. He's without doubt the leader of that team. If you look at him with the captain's armband on, he is marshalling the lot. And without him, I think Palace are gonna struggle massively. If he does leave and go to Chelsea, that's going to be a big miss. If it means leaving Chalobah there, or there's a deal to be done where they get Chalobah for, 5 million quid or something, but we end up getting Gurhey, then I don't like that, because I think Chalobah's worth way more than 5 million quid. But I think that's the sort of deal that I think might happen. We'll give them a cheap player. We'll get Gurhey. They'll feel like they've got a deal in terms of they're going to get a load of money for a player that's, is running out of his contract. They're still gaining somebody. They're not losing an entire back four, or the heart of their back four, I should say, and they can sort of move on. I think Palace have got more than enough to stay up. There's an awkward team to play against. I think Mateta has always got chances to score goals. Eze is always going to be someone that can create enough to keep them up. So I think they'll probably be quite happy with that deal. So if it turns out to be true and we do end up signing Gurhey, I'll be very, very excited for that. I'll be very pleased. When we were sort of doing those names the other day, Milinkovic, still for me, I think he's up there at the moment. He could even be the best centre-half in the league. And I genuinely mean that. Or maybe Van Dijk. Van Dijk, let's be fair, has done really, really well. But maybe other than him, he's probably right there alongside him. So, yeah, I'd be happy with Gurhey, really happy with Gurhey. And I think that it would give us a real stable platform. And we've said it before, if we can keep the door shut at the defensive end, we've got more than enough up front in Jackson, Palmer, Neto, etc. to win games of football. So I'll be really pleased with that deal. I will speak to you soon, mate, and take care.
Yeah, Aki's a great comparison, actually, because it's that sort of level of player, isn't he, where I think you're right, I think Gay's even better, but Premier League proven, solid player. You trust him immediately to come into and do a good job, and probably similar to Aki, even if you were to then go big in the summer, you feel like Gay would be okay with being that, third choice that probably Aki has been for a long time at City, where still play 30, 40 games in all competitions a year, but isn't going to be, slamming the manager's door down if he's not the first name on the sheet type thing. So yeah, it's a really good comparison. I think he went on loan, didn't he, to Bournemouth, and then we sold him to Bournemouth, and then he went to Man City, and we declined the relatively cheap buyback on him, which in hindsight was a mistake, wasn't it, to be fair? But that was the order of things there. I remember you and me, Joe, being at Wembley together for the FA Cup semi against Spurs when Conte was manager. It was that great game when Diego Costa and Hazard were off on the bench, and Hazard came on and scored a great goal, and then Matic scored that ridiculous worldie. But Aki played that game, I think, on the left side centre-back, and he was a young kid at that time, and you and I looked at him and were like, yeah, he's a player, isn't he? Like, you'd happily have had him stick around, and actually went on loan, I think, or to Bournemouth that summer, and we never saw him again, which was actually a bit of a shame. But yeah, really good comparison. Just recording this, actually, watching the United-Arsenal game, and Havertz, since he left Chelsea, is an incredibly easy player to hate, isn't he? He's a real horrible player, and yeah, he's a bit of a meme, isn't he, about himself? I mean, he had this edge about him at Chelsea, but he's only got worse at Arsenal, I think. And he's, a bit of the word slime ball as a player would come to mind for me. But yeah, we'll be back. We'll be back after the Bournemouth game midweek to reflect on that one and hope for a big and important Chelsea win in the league. So we'll see you next time. Cheers, guys.